So, Crusaders 2018 Super Rugby season preview, and although it slightly pains me as a Blues fan to say this, it's the 15th one I've done of these, and you could say I've saved the best to last. Last year's champions, yeah, and they are once again looking like a force to be reckoned with. So where are they at the moment? Scott Robertson did really well in his first year. Can't do much better than pretty much perfect season, bar one blip. Took out the championship. Looked good while doing it. Yeah, almost feel a bit disheartened for my Blues when I took a full look at the squad, but we'll see. In terms of changes in personnel, I mean, Fetu Douglas is gone. Marty McKenzie's gone. Digby Ioane's gone. Sean Wainui's gone. So a lot of the wider guys have gone, but the core of this team remains very largely intact. This must be one of the smoothest kind of year-on-year transitions that that we've seen, especially like in this season. A lot of teams have had guys coming and going. The Crusaders largely unchanged. So let's have a look. The front row: Taylor Fennell, Makaleo, Franks, Alalatoa, Yaga, Crockett, Moody, and Perry. Not a single change from last season. Exactly the same. And they were pretty devastating, weren't they? So, I mean, Taylor's got the looks of a guy who's just improving every year. He's already a fully, class hooker, so strong. Fennell's very capable backup, and what we saw of Makaleo, he looked alright as well. And they're all kind of 26, 27, so not even really at their peak, which is ominous for non-Crusaders fans. Perhaps so Franks, I mean, that guy just loves scrummaging. He lives for it. I think it's what he would do for a hobby if he wasn't a rugby player, he's not a guy to offload really. Like, as much as New Zealand has some pretty flashy like props and other forwards who can do some interesting stuff, he's not one of them, but he does his job to the core amazingly well. So yep, he's going to keep doing that. Alalatoa, very good from what we've seen of him. Interesting with him is what he's going to do in terms of international rugby, because he's been in New Zealand for a few years now. He is an Aussie, but I think he's already eligible for Australia and Samoa due to his parents and due to his being from Australia, but he's almost been in New Zealand long enough to try for New Zealand. So I think this year he would qualify. So yeah, that's one to watch to see what he decides to do, because his brother's already playing for the Wallabies, so we'll see. We don't get to see much of Yaga because he's behind Franks and Alalatoa. So Crockett, I mean, the man's played more Super Rugby games than any other player ever. So I think he'll probably hit 200 before he retires. He is 35 and he's in the high 100s, so he's going to keep on going like a machine. Moody, I mean, he's 29, which is surprising. He doesn't, I mean, I guess he compared to Crockett, so he seems young, but yeah, he's kind of at the peak of his powers and doing some serious business. And again, Perry, if you're behind Crockett and Moody, don't get as much time as you might like. Locks, unchanged from last year. So we still got Whitelock, Romano, Barrett, and Quinton Strange kind of getting some time in between drinks. So yeah, Whitelock, pretty much one of the best locks in the world. He's got a great line-out game. He carries the ball. He tackles a lot. So yeah, very good. Very good player. Any team would love to have him. Romano, he's 31, a little older than I thought he was, to be fair. He's going to be fighting for that kind of AB's bench spot behind locking partner Whitelock and behind old Retallick from the Chiefs. So with 2019 in mind, I think he'll be wanting to have a big season. There's a car coming. So he runs the ball a fair bit, more so than Barrett, the less flashy brother of, well, there's 4 Barretts. One of them is another lock or loose forward. He's another concussion case who's kind of had to call rugby kind of quits. But his 2 brothers who play for the Hurricanes are the flashy guys, and he's the grafter. More defense than Romano, but doesn't run the ball as much as Romano. So Whitelock's kind of like the best of both, whereas these 2 guys are both really good at kind of one or the other. They're both not bad, but they both have kind of a leaning one way or the other, whereas Whitelock's just pretty much good at everything. Like I said, Strange, he's only 21, so he kind of plays here and there. Loose forward, so Dunshay, he's lock loose forward. He can get minutes from time to time. Reed, well, All Black captain. He's pretty good, isn't he? Good hands, good leader. This is why I was saying it's getting ominous as a Blues fan when you start reading on. Matt Todd, he must be the most loyal man in New Zealand rugby. He still hasn't gone overseas. I mean, how old is he? 29. This is despite playing probably more than half of his career as second fiddle to Richie McCaw. He's played a handful of All Blacks games. He must be getting close to 20 games. But he's never really been the number one guy. He's behind Sam Cane for sure. So, very loyal guy. Must love playing in New Zealand, which is good in a time where a lot of other guys are really looking for the money. Speaking of guys looking for the money, Jordan Taufua is rumoured to be going to, well, somewhere in Europe soon. I don't think there's news out about it yet, but there's the rumours. There have been rumours about Ngatai, Tamani Valu, and Taufua, and 2 out of the 3 have come true, so it's kind of only a matter of time, which is a pity. He's a real dynamic player. Todd's kind of your tackle machine, but Taufua's the flashy guy who just cuts things up when he's got the ball and makes monster tackles rather than like a grafting style player. Samu's solid behind some pretty big names. Blackadder has a new addition. We saw a bit of him in the 10s. He's Todd Blackadder's son, so he's going to have a bit of extra spotlight on him, but he looked really good. Looked really good. He's only 22. Yeah, plays for Tasman. Yeah, ominous that there's that kind of young talent coming through. Lock loose forward. Sanders and Harmon are both new to the team. I believe Sanders is injured. He's come over from the Chiefs, and Harmon plays for Canterbury in the Mitre 10 Cup. So he'll be kind of chasing up Matt Todd for a 7 jersey from time to time. So pretty strong looking in the forwards, you would have to say. The backs, hey, it doesn't change on the whole strong thing. So Drummond Hall, Stratton, Moanga, Hunt, Delaney, your halfbacks and first fives, or scrum halves and fly halves, whatever you want to call them. So Drummond and Hall is an interesting one because they're both really good, kind of similar abilities. And the coach kind of swaps them to see who's going to get the start. I think if the fans had a choice, they would choose Drummond all day long. Hall has the taint of being originally a Blues player, so some of the fans not as keen on him. But yeah, both very good. Stratton will be doing good to get any minutes behind those 2 guys who are both battling it out for an All Blacks jersey behind Aaron Smith and TJ Perenara. Moanga is clearly night and day your first choice 10. Now I know Hunt had a few good moments last season when he kicked that massive drop goal against the Highlanders, which everyone went on about for ages, but you got to remember he missed the penalty a few minutes before that. So they call him clutch because of that kind of clutch play. And I think he kicked the penalty against the Reds in the last minute to win that game. So he has made a couple of big plays to win games right at the death, but overall, his running game, not as good as Moanga's. I don't think his place kicking is as accurate either from the stats. So Mo'unga is definitely your number one guy. And Delaney, he's like 35. He's definitely your experienced cover guy. So if there's one spot where I'd say the Crusaders are a bit shallow is 10. I know Mo'unga didn't start the season last year, but yeah, I mean, if you look at the Hurricanes, who've kind of got 3 guys who've played full seasons at 10 in first choice, whereas the Crusaders, not so much. So Mo'unga is the one guy who I would say you definitely want to keep fit the whole season. The mid and outfield, so Crotty, Goodhue, Bateman, Tamani Valu, Havili, Mateele, Bridge, Dag, Makalai, Enor, and Jordan. So Crotty, he's just Mr. Dependable of the All Blacks and the Crusaders. There's been some stats done on the All Blacks performances anyway, and they're always worse when he's not playing. And the trouble is, when he puts on the black jersey, he tends to get injured. So it's unfortunate for him, as he doesn't get the same... He is getting it a bit more now, but traditionally he's always been not thought of as highly as some more flashy guys like Sonny Bill and things like that, which is not always that fair, because he, as people are now really noticing, is just a real linchpin in the team. Goodhue's still only very young, but he had a really good season last year. Played a lot of games, performed really well. I think mostly at 13. Bateman, he's kind of an older man in the squad. I think he'd be 30, 31. He's mostly going to be covering that midfield, but he'll start some games when they rest some of the other guys. Tamani Valu had a really big season last year, and you would have thought would be really pushing for regular All Black selection, but he's taken up a contract next year overseas. So that ship's pretty much sailed now. His All Blacks career will most likely be over, which is a real pity because, yeah, he was just a walking highlight reel last season with some of his performances. Well, he looked best on the wing last season, but he can also cover 13 if needed. It's another area where I would say, like after 10, maybe the midfield kind of lacking a little bit of depth. I mean, I know Havili will cover the midfield, Tamani Valu will cover, because you can always switch Dag into fullback if Havili's in the midfield, so kind of, but I'm trying to find something that I can say that they're weak, but it's not a great argument. So yeah, Havili had a really great season last year. I think he topped the team in all kinds of stats. Yeah, he's a versatile player, does a lot of things very well. So he had a really good season. I think he'll be getting a lot of minutes again. Mateele didn't play as many games as he might have liked, but you know, when he got a game, he was always making line breaks and doing good things that wingers do. Bridge, still really young, had a good season. See where I'm going with this. Dag, he's kind of one of the older guys, because a lot of these guys are still quite young. Like, I mean, Havili's only 23, Bridge is only 22, Mateele is only 21, so yeah, a lot of young guys. I mean, Tamani Valu's only 25 and he's going overseas. So Dag at 29, everyone knows his real Dag, got the big boot, he's got the step. He's another one who kind of stayed loyal to New Zealand when he didn't have to. The All Blacks kind of showed him the doorish for a while. He was on the outer, but he managed to force his way back in, so kudos to him for that. Makalai, I don't think, played last season. Enor and Jordan are both prospects from the Mitre 10 Cup, both only 20, so lots to see in terms of minutes. The coach does seem to like to rotate the young guys in to give them some proper minutes if he thinks they're ready. So, yeah, he's kind of building himself some depth in case injuries do happen to come along. So it's intimidating, isn't it? It's a pretty good looking Crusaders squad. You don't look here and go, oh, well, they've lost Dan Carter, so they're going to be struggling, or something like that. There's no one name that's left that you're like, oh, it's going to leave a real hole. No, it's still pretty much the same team that won it last year. So, After having the perfect first season, can they continue it on in a second season? It's not easy, but if any team's going to do it, you'd put your money on the Crusaders. You kind of worry about the second season blues kind of getting in, where guys get a bit complacent, but again, there's enough combination of experience and youth here that I think they will just keep chugging along. And Robertson seems to be a coach who's pretty demanding of his players, so yeah, I don't imagine they'll be slacking off anytime soon. Like I said, the squad's really stable. There haven't been a whole lot of shifts. I highlighted the area with 10. Their goal kicking last year was only 67%, which was on the lower end of goal kicking. But a couple of factors with that. One, they did have to take a lot of shots at goal because they scored so many tries. And two, a lot of their tries were scored on the sideline. Like Tamani Valu got a lot. Havili got a lot on the sideline. Mateole scored a lot. So probably harder kicks than some of the other teams. So that might be a part of it. Although Mitch Hunt's drop goal record was 100% last season. So 1 from 1, but it was one important one. It's a team that really balances so many things in their game. You wouldn't say that the Crusaders are really known for one particular thing over anything else, because they do pretty much everything really well. The one thing that I did notice in terms of key stats for them, their points conceded average was 18th out of 18 teams, so they don't concede many points. They concede only 18.5 points per game and tend to score a lot more than that. Interestingly, the Lions were 17th with 19.1 points conceded per game. So if you're a team that can stop the other team scoring points, you're likely to be in the final, that would indicate. Their set piece is pretty much fantastic. They were equal top scrummaging team and the best team at winning their own line-out ball. So, I mean, if you've got a good set piece, that's a long way to go to winning games. Their scrum just destroyed some other scrums last season. It was pretty brutal to watch. And they always had the under Todd Blackadder as well. But sometimes their attack, not from set piece, didn't look as effective. It got a bit side to side. But we didn't see that so much last year. All the other stats, they were never usually the top. Like in run meters, offloads, line breaks, all that kind of stuff, tries. They were never the top, but they were always top 5. So they do everything pretty well, which is a good balance. And their rolling ball is really good as well. A strength of schedule, so they have the 5th trickiest, which largely comes from being in the New Zealand Conference. Like I've said a lot of times, New Zealand Conference is strong. You have to play New Zealand teams twice, so they've got the hardest strength of schedule based on for and against from last season. They avoid the Sharks and the Reds, which I think is a pity in both cases, because the Sharks would bring a different tactical challenge than what they're used to. The Sharks don't play like everybody else, so I would have been interested to see how Scott Robertson deals with a team playing that way. And the Reds, just because Brad Thorne, a legendary ex-Crusader, is now the coach of the Reds, that would have been an interesting kind of reunion thing to have, especially if the Reds had come to Christchurch. That would have been a good matchup. So, yeah, it's a pity we don't see that. Their schedule it's not too bad. They start with the Chiefs and Stormers at home, and they proved last year that they're pretty hard to beat at home. They've got the Canes and the Highlanders away, and then the Bulls at home. So for their first 5 games, they don't leave New Zealand, which I think is pretty kind. Then, interestingly, they go away to play the Lions in Johannesburg, so that's kind of a rematch of last year's final. So I think the Lions will be real fired up for that. I think that'll be the first non-New Zealand derby that'll be a big one to watch. It's kind of a must-watch if you're marking games on your calendar. They go to South America to play the Jaguares away, and then they get the bye. So the schedule's been kind of kind in that they stay in New Zealand for 5 games, and when they do travel, it's followed up by a bye to give them that time to get over any jet lag. Fortunately for them, they get the Sunwolves at home, so that eliminates a little bit more travel. 2 games in Oz, 4 games home and away in New Zealand. So it's a pretty kind schedule, I think. The bye they have last is in the 3rd to last round, so I think that'll come at a decent time because you're pretty much guaranteed they'll be in a secure playoff spot, so you can start to rest your players up before the playoffs. The only other thing I'll mention is it will be interesting to see how they start, because traditionally the Crusaders are a slow starting team. They don't often hit the ground running, and it's a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to argue they had a kind of slow start last year. They did win all the games, but they only just beat the Brumbies. It was a real laboured performance. And the Brumbies were in a really poor conference last year. None of the Aussie teams were very impressive, so that wasn't a great result. They played the Highlanders and were down 27-6 at one point, but managed to bring it back in the 77th minute. They beat the Reds, who were really poor, with a last-minute penalty over in Brisbane. And then in their 4th game against the Blues, at one point they were down 24-5. So in their first 4 games, they didn't blow anyone away. They weren't looking that good. They were looking certainly poorer than the Hurricanes and the Chiefs were at the time. But that's the thing about great teams, is even when they're not playing their best, they still find a way to win. That's really the hallmark of a great team. So yeah, Chiefs at home and Stormers at home, you'd still back the Crusaders to win. And then the Hurricanes away and Highlanders away. You'd think if they're not on form early on, that could be a challenge for them. We'll see how they go. I'm picking they're going to do pretty well, and they are joint favourites with the Hurricanes to win it, with the Lions kind of 3rd favourite. This is according to all the bookmakers. So yeah, it'll be an interesting season. So yeah, that's the end of the previews. That was the 15th of 15 teams. We'll monitor things closely. Kick-off to the Super Rugby season is not too far away, so hopefully we're all pretty excited about that. And yeah, we'll see how things go with the South African Conference starting in just a few days. Alright guys, that's it from me, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.